The discovery. Marcus Holloway adjusted his thermal goggles against the biting Arctic wind, watching the massive drill bore deeper into the permafrost. 3 months of drilling in this godforsaken wasteland, chasing seismic anomalies that shouldn't exist. The Norwegian research station buzzed with activity as his team worked around the clock, driven by readings that defied explanation. "Professor, you need to see this," called out Yuki Tanaka, the team's geologist, her voice crackling through the CUM system. The excitement in her tone made Marcus abandon his coffee and rush to the drill site. The core samples spread across the analysis table told an impossible story. At 12,000 feet down, they'd hit something that wasn't ice, wasn't rock, wasn't anything that belonged in the Arctic geological record. The material was metallic, with a crystalline structure that seemed to shift under microscopic examination. "This can't be right," muttered Viktor Petrov, the team's materials specialist, his thick Russian accent heavy with disbelief. "The composition, it's like nothing we've cataloged. The atomic structure is stable, but the arrangement suggests technology we don't possess." Dmitry Kozlov, the expedition security chief, stood silently in the corner, his weathered face etched with concern. 20 years in the Russian military had taught him to recognize when something was very, very wrong. "How deep does it go?" he asked quietly. Marcus studied the sonar readings, his hands trembling slightly. "At least 2 miles. The structure is massive, Dmitri. Whatever this is, it's been down there for. God, the ice layers suggest it's been frozen for over 50,000 years. The team exchanged glances. 50,000 years predated any known human civilization by millennia. Yet the metallic composition suggested advanced manufacturing techniques that modern science was only beginning to understand. "We need to go down there," Yuki said, her scientific curiosity overriding caution. "If this is some kind of ancient structure, it could rewrite everything we know about human history." Victor pulled up thermal imaging from the deep probes. "There's something else. The structure is generating heat. Minimal, but consistent. After 50 millennia in ice, nothing should be generating any energy signature." Marcus made the decision that would change everything. "We expand the drill site. I want a shaft wide enough for a descent team. Full archaeological protocols, but we move fast before the weather window closes." As the team dispersed to prepare for the most significant archaeological discovery in human history, none of them noticed the subtle shift in the readings. Deep beneath the ice, something had detected their presence. Ancient systems, dormant for millennia, flickered to life with the patience of entities that had waited far longer than the brief span of human civilization. The ship had been found, just as it always knew it would be. The question wasn't whether humanity was ready for what lay beneath the ice. It was whether the ship was ready for them. First contact. The descent took 18 hours through a shaft that gleamed with an otherworldly blue light. Marcus led the team down, his archaeological instincts screaming that they were about to witness something unprecedented. The rope and pulley system seemed primitive compared to what awaited them below. "Jesus Christ," breathed Ingrid Larson, the team's xenobiologist, as their lights illuminated the first glimpse of the structure. The ship for it was undeniably a ship stretched beyond their vision in both directions. Its hull seamless and unmarked by the millennia of ice dot. The surface wasn't metal, as they'd assumed, but something that felt warm to the touch, despite the sub-zero temperatures. Geometric patterns flowed across the hull like living circuitry, pulsing with faint bioluminescence that responded to their presence. "The airlock," Victor called out, his voice echoing in the vast cavern they'd carved. What he'd identified wasn't recognizable as such by human standards, a smooth section of hull that seemed to ripple as they approached. It's responding to us." Dmitri raised his weapon instinctively as the hull section began to dilate. Like an iris, revealing a passage that glowed with soft, breathable atmosphere. This shouldn't be possible. The ship's been dead for 50,000 years. Apparently not, Marcus whispered, stepping forward despite Dimitri's warning gesture. The passage welcomed them with air that tasted of recycled atmosphere and distant. Ozone. Emergency lighting illuminated corridors that were definitely designed for human proportions, yet somehow felt subtly wrong. The team moved in tight formation, their instruments recording everything. The ship's interior defied logic corridors that seemed to bend space. Walls that displayed star charts of constellations that wouldn't be visible from Earth for thousands of years. And technology that hummed with barely contained power. Professor. Yuki's voice was tight with controlled panic. The radiation readings ... They're not just clean, they're impossible. This technology is absorbing background radiation and converting it to usable energy. The efficiency rates are beyond theoretical. They reached what could only be the command center, a vast chamber dominated by crystalline formations that pulsed. With data streams. Workstations designed for human hands, but with interfaces that seemed to respond to thought rather than touch. In the center of the chamber, arranged in perfect rows, stood dozens of stasis pods. Some were shattered from within, their contents long since dissolved into organic soup. Others remained sealed, their occupants preserved in impossible detail. Ingrid approached the nearest, functioning pod with scientific detachment that barely masked her terror. "These aren't aliens," she reported, her voice hollow. "They're human. Completely, genetically human. But the cellular structure, they're old. Not 50,000 years old, but the genetic markers suggest they're from a baseline human population that predates anything in our archaeological record." "That's impossible," Victor protested. "Humans haven't had spaceflight capability for more than a century." Marcus studied the figures in the pods, men and women with familiar faces, yet somehow alien in their perfection. "Maybe we didn't invent spaceflight," he said quietly. "Maybe we remembered it." The ship around them seemed to pulse with anticipation, as if it had been waiting for this moment of recognition for millennia. The awakening, the holographic projection, materialized without warning, causing Dimitri to spin around with his weapon raised. The figure that flickered into existence was distinctly human, a tall woman with silver hair and eyes that held the weight of millennia. Her clothing was form-fitting and practical, clearly designed for space travel, yet with an elegance that spoke of advanced manufacturing. "Welcome home, navigators," the hologram said, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in their bones. "I am Keeper Zara 9, ship's intelligence of the vessel Prometheus Unbound. Your return is 73,412 days overdue." The team exchanged bewildered glances. Marcus stepped forward, his archaeological training kicking in. "We're not your navigators. We're researchers from the surface. We found your ship buried in the ice." The hologram's expression shifted, processing this information with visible confusion. "Negative. Genetic markers confirm navigator DNI signatures. Subjects Marcus 7, Yuki 3, Victor 12, Ingrid 5, and Dimitri 8. You have been absent from your posts for an unacceptable duration." "You're calling us by our names," Yuki whispered, her face pale. "How do you know our names?" "Designation records are maintained in perpetual memory banks," Zara 9 replied with mechanical precision. "However, your current genetic expressions show significant deviation from baseline navigator templates. Have you undergone unauthorized modifications during your absence?" Victor's instruments were going haywire, detecting energy signatures that shouldn't exist. "This is impossible. She's claiming we're clones or descendants of the original crew." "Not descendants," Zara 9 corrected, her holographic form solidifying as the ship's power systems came online around them. "Reincarnations. The Navigator Protocol ensures that essential crew members are guided back to the ship when the mission parameters require completion. The ship was transforming around them. Walls that had appeared dormant now displayed tactical information, star charts, and what looked suspiciously like a countdown timer. Emergency lighting bathed everything in an ominous red glow. What mission? Marcus demanded, his scientific objectivity warring with a growing sense of dread. The correction, Zara 9 replied matter-of-factly. Humanity's first interstellar expansion encountered an entity of hostile intent in the Vega system. The entity has been tracking our colonies, systematically eliminating human settlements. This ship was positioned as Earth's final defensive measure. Ingrid approached one of the active stasis pods, her readings showing increasing brain activity. In the occupant, something's happening. The pods are beginning revival sequences. Affirmative, Zara 9 confirmed. Proximity sensors detected the approaching entity 17 hours ago. The original navigator crew is being awakened to complete the mission. Your presence has triggered emergency protocols. Dimitri's military instincts were screaming warnings. What entity? What are you talking about? The main display activated, showing space beyond Earth's atmosphere. There, barely visible against the star field, something vast and wrong was moving toward the planet. It wasn't a ship's and recognizable shapes and purposes. This was something organic, predatory, and utterly alien. The Devourers, Zara 9. Said simply, they consume entire biospheres, leaving nothing but dead worlds in their wake. Humanity's colonies fell silent one by one. This ship contains the only weapon capable of stopping them. The first stasis pod hissed open, revealing a figure that was unmistakably human, yet somehow more than human. Ancient eyes opened, filled with the memories of civilizations that had risen and fallen while the ship waited in the ice. The awakened navigator spoke with Marcus's voice, but with the authority of someone who had walked among the stars. It's time to finish what we started. The choice the awakened navigator who called himself Marcus Prime moved with fluid precision that made the research team's Marcus feel clumsy by comparison. His genetic duplicate possessed knowledge that spanned millennia, memories of humanity's first expansion into the cosmos, and the terrible price they paid for their ambition. You don't understand, Marcus Prime said, studying readouts that appeared in mid-air at his mental command. The Devourers aren't just hunting us. They're drawn to consciousness itself. Every thinking species they encounter becomes food for their collective hunger. More stasis pods were opening throughout the ship. Victor Prime emerged with enhanced knowledge of technologies that made their surface science look primitive. Yuki Prime understood geology on a galactic scale, while Ingrid Prime carried the genetic memories of every species humanity had encountered in their brief interstellar age. This is insane, the Surface Victor protested, watching his ancient counterpart interface directly with the ship's systems. You're telling us that humanity had an interstellar civilization that was completely erased from history? Not erased, corrected Zara 9, her holographic form now accompanied by dozens of subsidiary data streams. Hidden. When the Devourers began their systematic elimination of human colonies, the decision was made to regress surface civilization to pre-spaceflight levels. This ship was Earth's insurance policy, hidden until the threat returned. Dimitri studied tactical displays showing the approaching entity. His experience told him they were looking at something far beyond conventional warfare. How long until it reaches Earth? 37 hours, Marcus Prime replied grimly. The weapon systems require a navigator crew to function. That's why you were guided back to the ship. Your surface lives were just ... preparation. Guided back? Yuki's voice was sharp with accusation. You're saying our entire lives were manipulated? Ingrid Prime, who had been silent while integrating with the ship's biological systems, finally spoke. The navigator protocol doesn't manipulate. It influences. Subtle genetic triggers that ensure the right people end up in the right places at the right time. You chose your careers, your research focus, your presence here, but you were predisposed to make those choices. The ship was fully awake now, its systems humming with power that dwarfed nuclear reactors. The hull had become transparent in sections, revealing the approaching threat in horrifying detail. The devourer entity stretched across thousands of miles, its organic mass pulsing with consumed consciousness from 100 dead worlds. The weapon, Marcus demanded, looking between his ancient self and the ship's AI. What kind of weapon? Marcus. Prime's expression was grim. Us. The ship doesn't contain a weapon. It is the weapon. A consciousness bomb designed to feed back through the devourer's collective mind. But it requires navigator consciousness to guide it, and he paused, meeting the eyes of his genetic descendant. The process is terminal for the crew. The weight of the choice settled over them. They could return to the surface, abandon the ship, and hope that conventional weapons might somehow stop an entity that had consumed entire solar systems. Or they could accept their role as humanity's last guardians, sacrificing themselves to save a species that had never known it needed saving. There's a third option, Dimitri Prime said quietly, his enhanced military knowledge providing strategic alternatives. We don't have to use the surface team as navigators. Their presence has awakened us. We can complete the mission. Negative, Zara 9 interjected. Original navigator consciousness has been dormant too long. Integration with current time reality requires active surface consciousness as a bridge. Both crews are necessary for mission success. The countdown timer showed 36 hours and decreasing. Above them, an entity that had ended civilizations continued its inexorable approach to Earth, drawn by 7 billion human minds that had no idea they were about to become food. The choice was no choice at all. Humanity's stand, the integration process was unlike anything they could have imagined. As the ship prepared for its final mission, the consciousness of each surface team member began to merge with their ancient counterpart. Marcus felt millennia of memories flooding his mind, the joy of first contact with alien species, the horror of watching entire worlds consumed by the devourer's hunger, and the desperate hope that had driven humanity to hide their true nature among the stars. The weapon is consciousness itself, Marcus explained to his team, his voice now carrying harmonics that resonated with the ship's intelligence. The devourers consume minds, but they can't process recursive consciousness loops. A navigator. Crew creates a feedback pattern that propagates through their collective network. Victor, his awareness now expanded to encompass technologies beyond surface understanding, was interfacing directly with the ship's propulsion systems. We'll need to get close enough for the consciousness weapon to achieve lock-on. The ship's stealth capabilities will get us within range, but once we fire, every devourer in the galaxy will know exactly where we are. The Arctic surface above them had become a staging ground for humanity's last stand. Military forces were mobilizing worldwide, but their conventional weapons would be useless against an entity that existed partially outside normal spacetime. The real battle would be fought in the realm of pure thought. Zara 9, Yuki called out, her enhanced awareness now capable of direct communication with the ship's AI. Show them what humanity accomplished before. The command center filled with holographic displays of humanity's first interstellar age. Cities that floated between the stars, technologies that reshaped matter at the quantum level, and species beyond counting that had welcomed humans as partners in a vast galactic community. All of it had been sacrificed to hide Earth from the devourers, to give the species one last chance when the threat inevitably returned. We weren't the first, Ingrid realized. Her consciousness now merged with biological knowledge spanning thousands of worlds. The devourers have been moving through the galaxy for millions of years, consuming species after species. But some of them found ways to fight back. The ship was moving now, rising through the ice with impossible grace. As it broke through into Arctic sky, its hull shimmered and seemed to fade from existence. Stealth technology that made human radar look like smoke signals guided them toward an appointment with an entity that had already consumed most of the galaxy. Contact in 14 minutes, Dmitri reported, his awareness now encompassing tactical knowledge from 100 worlds. All navigator stations report ready. The Devourer filled their view screens, a mass of organic horror that pulsed with the thoughts of every species it had consumed. Billions of alien minds screamed silently within its structure, their consciousness trapped and digested for eternity. Weapon charging, Victor announced. Navigator consciousness at full integration. Marcus felt his individual identity beginning to dissolve into something greater. Around him, his team was undergoing the same transformation. They were becoming something new, not just human, but the concentrated essence of human consciousness itself. Every dream, every hope, every stubborn refusal to surrender that had ever existed in the human heart was focusing into a single point of absolute defiance. For every species they've consumed, Yuki whispered, her voice now carrying the harmony of the ship's systems, for every world they've silenced. For humanity, Marcus added, feeling the weapon reach critical charge, the consciousness bomb fired, not as energy or matter, but as pure human thought unleashed at the speed of light. The recursive pattern of human consciousness, with all its contradictions and stubborn individuality, crashed into the Devourer's collective mind like a virus of hope, infecting a system built on despair. The entity's scream was audible across dimensional barriers as human consciousness propagated through its network. Every consumed species within its structure suddenly remembered what it meant to be free, to be individual, to refuse surrender. The Devourer's collective consciousness began to tear itself apart as billions of alien minds reclaimed their identity. In the command center of the Prometheus Unbound, the Navigator crew felt their individual selves dissolving into legend. They had become humanity's greatest story, the moment when one species said no to extinction and meant it. The ship's final transmission reached Earth as the weapon completed its work. This is humanity. We do not yield. We do not surrender. We endure. Above Earth, where an entity of cosmic horror had threatened to consume an entire world, there was only empty space and the echo of human defiance spreading across the stars. Humanity, fuck yeah.